Christy. Welcome to my channel and welcome to day 2 of my 2021 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be using the Hello Bluebird Snow Play stamp set. So I've stamped that out on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink. And I'm going to be coloring to match my pattern paper from the Simple Stories Make It Merry 6x8 pad. So I'm just going to tuck that under my cardstock panel and then I'll jump into my Copic coloring. The first thing I'm going to color are the two deer, and I chose E33, E35, and E37. I think this color works really great for American deer because it has a little bit of like a caramely undertone to it, and I just think it really matches that dun colored hide that American deer have. So I used that E37 to lay in my shadow. I kind of broke him into two parts since he has that big scarf that goes across the lower part of his body. So I just worked on the head first, and then I'm coming down and doing the lower part separate, adding some shadow down the back of the body and the backs of the legs. I'm also going to add some underneath the scarf and also a bit on the chest area because his head protrudes out quite a bit, so that would cast a shadow on there, and then also on the tail. And then I'm going to come in with the E35, which is my mid-tone, and color over the edge of that E37 so I get that all broken up and nice and smooth, just working my way over that until everything is really nice and blended. And then I will come in with my lightest shade, which is the E33. You can see in a lot of places I'm doing little circular strokes to really create that nice blend and break up the edge of the previous color, like I said. I'm going to stop a little bit above the belly because I want that to be lighter. I'll bring in E30 and E31 for that. So I'll use the E31 to transition down. I'll also add a little bit of that to the inside of the ear and the face. And then I'm going to finish with the E30. I also did leave a little white space on the belly, and that's going to match the white tail. Then I'm going to move on to the second deer and color him exactly the same. So I'm really excited to revisit this Snow Play stamp set once again. I actually created a card during my 2018 holiday card series. It was card number 8 in that series, and that is to this day one of my favorite Christmas cards I've ever made. I just absolutely loved the color palette and the pattern paper layering that I did on that card. But it only featured the penguins and I think maybe the cardinals as well, or maybe just one of them. But anyway, this stamp set is one of my all-time favorites from any company for the holidays. I just love these sweet little images, and so I was really excited to get to play with this once again. The new Hello Bluebird release is going to be coming in a few days, and I'm super excited for all of that holiday goodness. But it's so fun to revisit older favorite sets as well. I really love bringing them out and, you know, recreating something with them so that they get another lease on life. So this is one of those sets where I can never decide what my favorite image is because I just love them all so much. Sometimes I think it's the penguins, other times the cardinals, and probably most often that sweet little mouse with the gift. I just think he is the most darling. So I'm going to finish up this little deer, and then for their hooves, I'm going to use E57 and E59, just a little E59 at the back, and then I'm going to also do the antlers on the deer on the right with these shades, so I added just a touch of that. And then I'm going to blend out with the E57. I thought that would be something different other than black, but still has that dark contrast against the rest of their fur. Black for the hooves, I mean, not the antlers. But anyway, I'm going to move on to the little mouse now, and I wanted him to be brown as well, but not the same brown as the deer, so I went with some lighter browns. I chose E50, E51, and E53. So I started with the E53 and did my shading with that. And then I'm blending that out with the E51, and then I'll use that E50 to finish him off. I did leave a little white area around his nose, and I colored the edges of his ears. I'll fill those in the center a little bit later on. I did do a second layer on that mouse because he wasn't quite as saturated as I would have liked. And then for the penguins, I'm going to use T3, T5, and T7. So I'm using that T7 down the backs of the bodies and also on the underside of the little flippers, and then the bottom of the tail area as well. And then for the second little guy, I'm adding a shadow up under his hat, and then the same shading for the rest of him. Just using a very thin line because I don't want him to get too dark. I wanted them to look a little bit more light, not quite gray. I still want them to read as black, but I just want it to be kind of like a soft black. So I blended that out with the T5, but still left plenty of room for my highlight shade. And since they were both quick and easy and right on top of each other there, I just decided to do the shading for each of them at once to save some time. And then I'm going to fill in with that T3. I don't know, I just love the expressions on these guys. I just think they're so, so sweet, especially the one with his beak kind of turned up toward the sky. I don't know, there's just such an innocence about them. I don't know, I think they're so, so sweet. So I'm going to finish filling in the second guy, and I'm working over the edge of that T5 once again to just make sure everything is nicely blended. And then before I put those away, I'm going to use the T3 to go around the outer area of the eyes for the cardinals. And then it wasn't dark enough, so I added in some T5 and then blended that back out with the T3. And then I'm going to finish with the T1 on that area. And then for the white parts of the penguin's body, I'm going to start with that T1 and do a little shadow on the outside edge and then also under the outstretched little flipper so that that has a little bit of shading under it. And then I'll blend that out with the T0 and let that fade into the white area. I'm using YR04 and YR07 for their beaks and feet. I just did a touch of the YR07 first, and then I'm blending that out with the YR04. And I decided not to do orange beaks for the cardinals. I'm going to go back and do those with black later on. But for their bodies, I'm going to use R24, R29, and R39. That R39 adds so much depth because it's a really dull looking red. And then that R29 is so bright, and the R24 has just the touch of pink in it. So I think this is a really, really good combination for cardinals. So I did the shadows on the backs of their bodies and the underside of their wings. And then I'm blending forward with the mid-tone. And then finally coming in with that highlight shade, the R24, leaving a lot of area on their belly for that, and then a little bit on the wing and tail as well. And I think that color combo is just so bright and vibrant. It just screams holidays to me. So like I said, I wanted to do their beaks black, so I grabbed T7 and it just filled those in quickly. And then I decided to stick with my red combo to do some of the accessories. So I'm going to do the little Santa hat on the penguin up top, Just putting the darkest at the edge where the fold of that hat brim is and blending with the highlight at the top where the light would be shining on it. And then same for the gift. I'm going to put that darkest shade down at the bottom, blend up about another third with that mid-tone, and finish with the highlight. The next combo I'm using is BG10 and BG11 to pull out that aqua blue in that pattern paper. So I'm going to add a little bit of coloring to the scarves. I'll add more detail to those later on. I use the BG11 first and then blend it out with the BG10, and I use that on the Santa hat, the little white parts for that. And then for the darker green stripes in the pattern paper, I used G46 and G29. I did the bow on the mouse's gift, and then I'm going to use that G29 and go back to my R39 and try to mimic that plaid pattern in the background. I'm not going to do it completely because it's such a narrow little area, but I definitely want to make it look like it matches. So I added some green diagonal stripes in one direction and then added some red stripes in the other direction. In some places I added 2 stripes right up next to each other and just kind of filled in everything until I thought it kind of looked nice. So I'm going to finish with the deer, and then I'm going to do the penguin's scarf exactly the same, just using those narrow little stripes, barely touching my marker nib down to the paper and using very light pressure so I can get those super thin little lines. So the great thing about adding little details like this is, number one, it just makes your card look a little bit more unique because not everybody is doing it. But number two, you can really customize it how you want. You could make that stripe pattern as thick or as thin as you want it to be. So it's really fun to kind of just play around and see where it takes you. Now that I'm done with the little scarves, I'm going to add some rosy cheeks to all of my critters. I'll also color the inside of the ears of my deer and my mouse. So I use the R20 first, add a little oval on the cheek area, and then I'm tracing around that for the rosy cheeks to kind of blend that out. And then for the ears, I'm just blending upward with that R11. Then I'm going to grab a white Sakura jelly roll pen and just add a few more little details to that plaid pattern to help it match the pattern paper even more. Just kind of breaks up a little bit of those stripes, and I just like the way it looks. I think it adds something to it. So once I finish that up, I'm going to grab a black Sakura jelly roll pen and go over the eyes of all of my critters. This adds a little bit of like a shine to them and just really brings them to life. And then I'll trim these images out with their matching dies. So I'm going back to my Simple Stories Make It Merry 6x8 pad and choosing another pattern that I think will work well with the plaid. It's this little white with black asterisks, and I'm going to trim both of those out with the Gallery Frame 7 die from Hello Bluebird. Then I'll remove the inner portion from each of those and swap them with the outer portion. So I could actually make 2 cards with these little die cuts. So I'll definitely save the second one for another day. But for this one, I'm going to tape the 2 pieces together so I can use them as one. So I just flip that over to the back, and then I'm tearing down strips of Scotch tape and just taping them back together. And then once I have that all taped together, I'm also going to add some foam tape. So I will add it to all 4 sides and then also to the cross part in the middle so everything is really well supported, and I'm using Scotch 3M foam tape for that. Then I cut down 2 pieces of white cardstock with the cloud border from the Grassy Knolls die set, and I'm going to use those to be my snowbank. So I'm just peeling off some of that release paper, trying to figure out how I can attach that. I didn't really want to take off all of the foam tape just yet, but it turned out that I really needed to in order to adhere it well. So I went ahead and just peeled off the rest of those release papers, and then I can turn that back over and pick up the other one with the foam tape, just pressing that down. And then I'm going to grab my cutter bee scissors and trim off any excess. And that way I can get a little bit of a different formation, even though I used the same die for both of those. I've made myself a card base out of MFT snow cone cardstock. It's 5 1/4 by 5 1/4, so it's the same size as that Gallery Frame 7. And I'm just tracing that Gallery Frame 7 onto the front of that card base so I can make sure to line up my sentiment and the rest of my stamping really well. And I'm stamping in Lawn Fawn Mermaid ink. I'm going to use my Twiddler's Nook Pressure Pal to make sure that I get a really nice impression and even pressure as I press those images down. So I'm doing a sprinkle of little snowflakes and snow, I don't know, balls, I guess, and also a sentiment that says merriest wishes to you. So I'm just going to keep moving those little snowflake images around until I have the 3 empty quadrants kind of filled up a little bit. Then once I'm happy with that, I'm going to open up that card base and do some stamping on the inside as well. I always like to finish off the inside with some more images and another sentiment. So I used the 2 penguins that didn't fit on the outside of the card, plus a few more snowflakes, and the sentiment that says, "'Tis the season to be jolly." So then I'm going to take a white eraser and remove those pencil lines so none of those are showing. And then I will grab my Gallery Frame 7 out of the pattern paper and carefully line that up with the edges so it's on there nice and straight, and press that down into place. And then I can bring in my images. So I'm going to start adhering them down using some Bearly Art Precision Craft Glue, and I'm going to the bottom right quadrant first with this male deer, and I put him at a little bit of an angle so he looks like he's galloping across the snowbanks. Then in the bottom left quadrant, I'm going to add my 2 penguins. So the one with the Santa hat is going to go toward the top of that snowbank, and then the other one that's looking up, kind of toward that sentiment, is going to be a little bit down in front. And then in the top left quadrant, I'm going to add the other deer so they are diagonal from each other. Just making sure that that's all tucked into that space. And then I'll add the little mouse in the top right quadrant over on the right hand side. So he's just kind of accenting that sentiment there with his little ear. And then I have my 2 adorable little cardinals. I'm going to put one in the top left in that little empty space there. And then I'll add the other one at the top right, so they're kind of looking at each other from the opposite sides of the little window frame. Then I'm going to add a bit of Stardust Stickles to finish off this scene. I absolutely love this stuff, especially at Christmas time, because it just adds the perfect amount of shimmer. And because it's mostly clear, it doesn't cover up too much of the coloring. It has a little bit of like an iridescent shimmer to it, but the coloring that you do completely shines through underneath. So I added it to the whites of the Santa hat and then on the insides of the deer's ears, just to have something there on both of them, and the ribbon on the mouse's gift. So I'll lift that up so you can see how that catches the light, and of course give you another peek at the inside as well. I hope you guys enjoyed day 2 of my 2021 holiday card series. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of the videos. I'll be posting on Mondays and Fridays, but also maybe some bonus videos in there as well. If you're interested in any of these products, you'll find them listed and linked down below. And if you'd like to keep watching, here is day 2 of the previous 2 years of holiday card series. You can click on either one of them to check them out. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day. Bye-bye.